All right, folks, we're here once again with our show on YouTube Live, the ISD show on YouTube Live. Here with Yama and Jamie. It's glad to have you here. You know, I wanted you here
What a week.
yesterday, but you're a busy man. You got a lot going on, and you know,
Yeah.
everybody wanted to hear from the Yama.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what can we do?
Well, as I was just explaining to you too, right? My wife is away this week. It's the end of the season. She's on a course right now. So it's just me and the kind man, my 2-year-old kid. And, I have some time, whatever, but I'm not as flexible during this time right now. And of course, I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen,
Yeah,
whatever, right? And of course, Brian Kelly leaves for LSU. So,
yeah.
what are you going to do? What are you going
Yeah,
to do?
well, it is what it is, and we're just glad we get to have you here for now, and then of course, we'll have you all through the week and everything as this thing unfolds. Lots of news that is breaking today. Well, I guess it hasn't. There hasn't been a lot of news breaking, but a lot of speculation, a lot of things we've heard, and things that have kind of unfolded over the last kind of 24 hours. I don't know if you got a chance to kind of see Brian Kelly's little press conference he had there at LSU. What'd you make of that?
I mean, I think that's what you say to your new team, and of course he's selling it. He's like, I'm not here to win the press conference, but he is. He's there to win guys over and tell them, I'm here because you guys are the best, and this is the best, and you know, of course he's going to say that. He's going to put it all in those terms to try to sell like this is why I'm here because this is a better job. This is everything. It's more important to me here. This is I think I can win a championship here. Of course he's going to say this kind of thing, and of course it's going to come back to bite him. And the Notre Dame players are going to see it and be pissed about it, and they
Yeah,
should be.
yeah,
They definitely should be, right? So, I mean, else you keep putting that stuff out because I think it's just motivation for the Notre Dame kids.
yeah. This will be a interesting ride. And to be honest with you, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Brian Kelly because that's past tense. But I do think it's interesting, and I think it's telling that a lot of these guys, meaning their assistant coaches, haven't, immediately went down to LSU and said, "Hey, I want to follow Brian Kelly." I think that is very interesting. I think it's also telling. I think it's, you know, I don't think it's a good look for Brian Kelly.
No, I don't think it's a good look for him. I mean, then again, remember when Nick Saban went to LSU? None of his coaches went, and everybody said, "Well, I mean, just shows you, Nick Saban. People don't like him. I don't
Yeah,
know how this is going to work." I mean, it worked out pretty well. The guy won a national championship there. Obviously, did well, and then went on to Alabama and whatever. So just because people don't like working for a guy doesn't mean he won't be successful. But I mean, it says a lot because he didn't let any of these other guys in the loop. He didn't let these other people know. And the other thing, like, you can't expect a guy like Tommy Reese who like bleeds blue and gold. Like, he came back for an opportunity at Notre Dame. I'm sure he would have been happy to just keep working in the NFL, and move up there. But he wanted to come back because it's Notre Dame and this is his school, and he loves the program and loves the team and all of that. And it's why I look Matt Balis, like, you're just bailing on these guys, and it's not like they didn't make a bowl or whatever, and they don't have anything left. Like, they're still a contender.
yeah,
They're still a contender. So, there's loyalty to not just the school and the program, but to specifically the players and the kids. And you're leading them high and dry if you're doing that. And I'm sure, what, everyone is worried about their own job security, and they should be, right? They should be. You got to worry about yourself in those situations. But when it comes down to it, you're going to look these kids in the eye that you actually care about. And it just shows, dude. Brian Kelly, he's always been a CEO kind of guy. He might have shown up to the workouts more, but I mean, he's never, as far as you and I know, he's never been really connected or close with the players. And that's always been the position coaches and the coordinators have always been, obviously it's a strength coach, Matt Balis, have been much tighter with the players. So it's not as easy for those guys to just bail, and where Brian Kelly, like, I mean, is there anyone who's going to be like, man, I got to go back to visit Brian Kelly? Like, no, they don't go to do that just to see him. They're tighter with those guys that, help get them there, that they're in the meetings room with every day. And it's a lot harder for those guys to walk away.
Yeah, yeah, I think Reese is a prime example. And look, I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at the situation and saying, well, why hasn't all these guys gone? But if I'm Tommy Reese, I look at the situation that Kelly did, and I say, well, obviously this guy cares about himself and not anybody else. I think that that's a thing. He went and ran the money and didn't tell anybody what was going on, and guys are finding out, probably the wrong way. And so if I'm Tommy Reese, I'm like, okay, first of all, the head coach has shown that he's going to do what's best for him, and also I'm not sure. Like if I'm Reese, I'm thinking I'm not sure Brian Kelly's going to work all that hard because he didn't work that hard at Notre Dame. We know he's only going to coach for so many years. So why would I go risk my reputation and my whole future to go coach for a guy that I'm not sure really cares about me and what I'm doing and may not work that hard? Why not go work for a guy that is going to work really hard and give us a chance to be really, really good? And that's why I think you're seeing Tommy Reese kind of hanging out here, seeing what's going to happen. I think that's exactly the same reason with Marcus Freeman. Even if he doesn't get the Notre Dame head coaching job, I'm not 100% sold that he's going to follow LSU down there. Maybe he will because it's a lot of money, but I'm sure he's looking at a lot of different options at this point, Jamie.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like Freeman and Reese are perfect examples. Those guys are going to have options.
Oh yeah, lots. Yeah,
they don't have to do anything to follow Brian Kelly if they don't trust him or they don't think that that's the right situation for him. Like Marcus Freeman, I mean, Ohio State, they're going to want him. They're going to want him at defense coordinator. You hear stuff about the Duke job for him. Like he could get that if it didn't work out with Notre Dame, right? So a million other places would want him. Like he's going to be a very coveted coach, no matter what happens. So if he's not the head coach at Notre Dame, he has option. Tommy Reese could go and work in the NFL tomorrow if that's what he wants. He has connections there. He has friends there. He'll go and coach in there. Will he be an OC? Probably not, but he'll go there, be a position coach, and be on track. And if he wants to do that, he could do that. Or somebody else would. Like, you don't think that like Pat Fitzgerald and all their team wouldn't just hire him in a second? There's a lot of teams that would hire Tommy Reese, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so all those guys have options, and also too, I mean, it's a completely different world, recruiting in at LSU compared to Notre Dame. And some guys are fine with that, and some guys are mercenaries and they can go in and they can just do that. But not everybody's going to fit that. So they have to look at that too. They also have to look at like the guys who have families and like, man, Baton Rouge is much different than South Bend. It's a much different place, a much different environment, right? So, you have to look at all of those kind of things that go with it. So I would be surprised if there was more than a couple guys that actually ended up in the end with it. And like maybe Brian Polian seems like he would be almost an obvious guy to maybe go, but
I'm sure Polian would love to stay at Notre Dame. I'm sure he would.
I'm sure he would love to.
I'm sure all the coaches would, to be honest with you. I think that they all really liked coaching there. So, and it was interesting. We've kind of gone on ISD and we've kind of looked at a lot of the things that have been said and stuff that we've heard. And it seems like this is heading in one direction right now, and that is Marcus Freeman seems to be the guy that a lot of people think will be the head coach. Pete Sampson, who is a colleague of ours, reported that Tommy Reese has been talked to about a potential offensive coordinator position. I think that that's true. And if that's true, and Matt Bayless has already been, said that he's going to be the strength and conditioning coach. If I mean, Notre Dame has to have a head coach, or at least a pretty good idea who their head coach is. And there are a lot of ways to kind of look at this, and I kind of explained it all on Irish Sports Daily. And if you're not a member of Irish Sports Daily, great time to sign up. You can sign up for just $1 for a week just to see if you like it, and kind of follow everything that's going on right now with coaching search, and of course there'll be the assistant coaches and all this type of stuff. We've got to figure out who's coming back, all this stuff. So there's going to be a lot of breaking news. If you're not a member of Irish Sports Daily, great time to sign up. Just go to irishsportsdaily.com, click on the subscription benefits section, and sign up. So anyway, my thoughts are, if Bayless has already said he's coming back, and he knows that he's coming back, and Swarbrick's talking to Tommy Reese about a potential offensive coordinator, well, they have to know who the head coach is, because the head coach would want, if it's, say, Luke Fickell, or it's Matt Campbell, or it's somebody else that's not Marcus Freeman, there's no way, if I were a head coach, Jamie, that I would say, yeah, go ahead, hire whoever you want at offensive coordinator, go ahead and hire whoever you want at strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, I'll have a 30-minute conversation on the phone, and that's fine. There's no way that would happen. As a head coach, you would want to know a whole lot about what your offensive coordinator is going to do. What the strength and conditioning, are you on the same page? And so, to me, it seems like that's where this is headed. And I know a lot of people said, well, Swarbrick said that if he hired an interim coach, that person wouldn't be a candidate. Well, I think the reason he said that was because if he was going to name, say, Marcus Freeman as the interim head coach, he would name him as the head coach if he's going to hire him as the head coach. There's no reason to name anybody interim if that's a head coach. So the other prospect of it all is, he said he wasn't going to hire, if he named an interim head coach, that person would not be a candidate for the head coaching job. Well, the way I read that, Jamie, is if that's the case, the only person he would be interested in would be probably Marcus Freeman at this point, because he wouldn't name Freeman as the interim coach because he's probably gone at that point. And so that's kind of the way I looked at it, read the tea leaves and everything. We've kind of done a lot of research about assistant coaches. I think a lot of the assistant coaches would love to stick around Notre Dame if they can. And the thing that really stood out to me, Jamie, was Swarbrick's comments about, he praised the Notre Dame staff, and he said, look, this is one of the best staffs in the country. So doesn't it make sense to try and keep most of those guys if you're going to put Marcus Freeman in place? If you keep some of the top offensive guys and you keep some of the top defensive guys, you're going to probably keep the majority of your recruits. There's continuity. The players that are thinking about going to the NFL, if they know the coach that's coming back, they're more likely to come back if they know that, hey, I get along with my position coach. So to me, I think it's headed that way. I don't know that for a fact, but if it is headed that way, what do you think of that?
I think it would be great if it is headed that way, because obviously you got to make the decision that he's the right guy, right? And Jack Swarbrick can't just do it just based off of what the players say or what the recruits are saying. He can't. He's got to make sure that this is the right guy and do all that first. But if that's the decision, then I think it's fantastic, because it does keep that continuity of the staff, which keeps this recruiting class together. And the reason why too, and I know Swarbrick, he talked about, finding the fit and not kind of rushing it, but you kind of have to be fast with it. It's different. This isn't the February signing date now. Now with that early signing date, you don't have time to do it. So either you kind of bail completely and say, we're going to wait on this and just let it ride out, and then who cares about this, and you just kind of blow the rest of the season off, or you say, is if Freeman's the guy, it's got to be done by the end of this week, basically, because you need to get all these guys, all the ducks in order so you can finish off the class, keep those 2023 kids, all that, because all of that, I mean, that's college football. That's a huge part of it now. Like, you can't, it, Oklahoma right now is just getting picked apart, and they have kids in the portal every day.
Yeah.
They, and fair enough, they want to make the right hire, and they were blindsided and all of that, right? And it's pretty obvious that they didn't have somebody on the staff that they thought, well, they could just transition to, right?
Yeah.
But if Notre Dame feels Marcus Freeman is the guy, and like you said, all the tea leaves are pointing that direction, because why would they be talking about to Tommy about any of this other stuff if it was somebody else, unless they already had that other person locked up? And if that's the case, fine, whatever. But it has to be quick. It
Yeah.
has to be quick. That's the only way you can do it this day in college football. Waiting like the days of saying like, because I think Matt Rule would be a terrific coach,
I
right?
do
If
too. Yeah.
I think he would be great, but you know what? Only if he's like, I'm out on the Carolina Panthers right now, and
Yeah.
he's coming. Because if he's waiting until the end of the NFL season, you're back to rebuilding.
Hmm.
You all of that work that Brian Kelly did and that you want to try to take advantage of, that's gone. And now you have to do that. And maybe he would be the right guy to do it because he's obviously taken on the rebuilding things. But it's like you can't wait. You can't wait for that, and you can't wait without any guarantees either, right? So I think the quicker the better. It's important. It's critical, and it's got to be right. It's got to be the right fit. But as soon as you know it's the right fit, it's got to happen in a second.
Well, here's the thing. It's the transfer portal that kills you. And, it's one thing to lose 10 recruits. But if you lose a whole bunch of your roster on top of that, I mean, you're going to be decimated. And the difference, and we've been talking about this on the show, on Power Hour, and on the board, Notre Dame's not going to be able to get a bunch of transfers in. It just won't work that way. So they're not going to be able to just go and okay, we lost 12 guys. Let's go find 12 more that we can bring in and transfer in that are not grad transfers. Notre Dame, the best way for Notre Dame to get people in is as grad transfer, not as a regular student. We've talked about it many times about, it's just impossible because of the way the curriculum's set up. So not only do you have to worry about not losing these recruits, but, transfer portal. And I think people would be shocked to know how many people would be bouncing, if they don't get this thing figured out pretty
And
quickly.
guys leaving for the NFL too.
All the NFL guys will be gone, and a whole bunch of guys that are sitting there. Look, these guys, they didn't sign up to coach for somebody they don't really know or to play for somebody they don't really know. And what used to hold people in place was that 1 year loss of scholarship or eligibility, but that's no longer there. These guys can go anywhere, and that's why you're going to see, I think, Notre Dame move quickly. I think that it'll be interesting to see if it is Freeman, what people think about the hire. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure unless they can get a Luke Fickell or a Matt Rule or a Matt Campbell to come immediately. I don't think they have much of other choice, to be honest with you. They really need to get somebody in place, and that person needs to be on the phone talking to people right away. And, that's what needs to happen. So I think that's probably what we'll see.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, because I see there's one guy in the comments who's just going off on Freeman being the next Bob Davie and all of that kind of stuff. And I get it. Like everyone, you always want to have the guy who has the resume, right? You want to have, Brian Kelly before he came to Notre Dame. You want that guy. That's why you want Luke Fickell, right? Because he has that more of the resume. I think the thing with Freeman, and there's always going to be unknown with a guy who's never been a head coach before. There's always going to be, right? But one, you look at recent track record of Ohio State, Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, who just got paid big time in what he did at Oklahoma, Kirby Smart, right? Bob Stoops at Oklahoma. Like, it's not unprecedented that guys come in. Bob Stoops came in second year, rebuilding project, won a national championship at Oklahoma, right? Never was a head coach before. it's not unprecedented that it's happened. And the other thing is that the one thing with Marcus Freeman, that even if it was the hire and it didn't work out the way that they wanted to, well, the next guy is going to have a loaded roster because they're going to recruit better than they ever have, and we've already seen it. We've already
Yeah.
seen it. That's the other thing is the upside. And any hire, there's always a downside to any hire, but the
Sure.
upside with Marcus Freeman is extremely high, which is and not to mention like if people might say that it might not matter that much how they're gonna how much the players care, but if the players love you, they're gonna play for you and they're gonna play hard for you and they're gonna give like that matters. It does matter. And they weren't playing hard for Brian Kelly, you know, they were playing hard for Marcus Freeman. They were playing hard for Clark Lee. They're playing hard for Tommy Reese. They love those guys, right? They love those guys, and that matters, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
part of culture, right?
Yeah.
So that part is so. I don't know, like I can't say, maybe better, Mike, when Bob Davie got elevated and how that how the players felt about him and whatnot or whatever. Obviously, it didn't work out, but I can tell you right now, the players love Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, Bob Davie was just a guy. He was
Yeah.
just a guy. And he was out of central casting as far as probably what they were looking for at the time. Somebody that was kind of the anti-Holtz, but and somebody who was just going to do pretty much what they wanted. So Holtz was a loose cannon, and so that it is what it is. Now, as far as being a downside to every hire, I think that that's true. I mean, heck, even when I hired you, I mean, I had to really get over the Canadian thing. I didn't want to hire any Canadians, and,
This
and so
Here it all comes out now.
so so that was
That's
the
why you were
hardest
down on
part.
Claypool too. Just
I struggled to get over
yeah.
that. All right, I'm just kidding, man. But but when you think about the situation, um, it's to the point where you have to move very quickly. And as you said, the most important thing is we know right now, what we know is these players like and love Reese. They love Marcus Freeman. They love playing for those guys. We don't know whether if Matt Campbell came in, they'd love playing for him. We don't know whether they'd love playing for Luke Fickell, or the changes that these guys would make. So I think that that's a bonus too when you look at this. Now, um, let's say it is Freeman, okay? If you're Marcus Freeman, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Yama. If you're Marcus Freeman, who on the Kelly staff do you want?
I would want Tommy Reese. I would want Tommy Reese. And then with that John McNulty, I think he's done a terrific job with the tight ends. I think he recruits hard.
Yep.
I think he's a guy that really kind of gets Notre Dame and has done a tremendous job there. Lance Taylor, I think, has done a great job. I think he's done a great job. And
Agree.
honestly, if he's still the running backs coach, that's great and part of the run game. But he might be someone too. Like he's coached receivers. He was a receiver guy before. Maybe he becomes a receiver guy. I think those three are the guys that I would want on the offensive staff for sure. And not to say that Quinn or Dell it's like 100% a no go, but I think they could probably upgrade.
Yeah.
With their but those three in particular on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, I'd probably keep them all. And obviously, you're going to have to hire a linebackers coach and a defensive coordinator. Where they're going to go from there, I mean, I guess I got to start. I mean, I have a list of defense coordinators, but it's probably going to be either from within or Marcus Freeman has somebody else in mind already. Obviously, Nick Lazinski is a guy who's kind of really put in the time. Maybe he's someone who could get elevated to a linebacker coach. He's obviously not going to get elevated to a defensive coordinator position, but you have to look. Maybe it is Mike Ellston's time to be defensive coordinator. Maybe he has a shot there. Mike Mickens, certainly somebody who could have a shot at getting elevated there too. But I like the defensive staff. Like I like O'Leary. I think he's done a good job. I think he's worked really hard as a recruiter. Maybe there's stuff we don't know about him because he's kind of new to the job, but I think he's certainly done a good job with the safety position in a kind of a not a great spot with it this year. So, and Mike Ellston, I think the one thing you can say about Mike Ellston, I think you could get a guy who's a more dynamic recruiter at the defensive line position, but he is a developer. He's absolutely done a great job developing. He's recruited well. Not outstanding, but well. He definitely has some down years. And the other thing is he loves Notre Dame. He
Mhm.
does. He absolutely loves Notre Dame. He wouldn't have been around. So whether he wants to go because if he's not the coordinator or not, who knows? But he's definitely somebody that I mean, in some other circumstance, I could see you wanting to make a change there. He's obviously a Brian Kelly guy. He's been with Kelly for many years, but I mean, he's a guy that I think you would want to at least try to retain.
Well, there's certainly a lot of good defensive linemen that are committed and in 2023, and I think that would help those guys knowing that, the guy that they thought would be coaching them is coming back. And I think Mike Elston's been pretty loyal to Notre Dame, and I could definitely see an argument being made for him as well. So, I think the one question is, what do you do with Polian? Because um, I've never been a fan of having just a special teams coach.
Me either.
And so I think it kind of limits you on some of the other stuff that you want to do. But I think Brian Polian is a good guy. I think he's a guy that's been around the program for a long time. I'm sure he would like to stay too, but I'm just not sure what role he could play at this point. At that situation. So, I just, if I were Freeman, I would not want to just have a special teams coach, and that's their only thing they do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's nothing against Brian Pullen. I think he
No,
actually has done a
a
fine
really good
job
job. Yeah,
with and probably surpassed a lot of expectations, kind of based on what people previously thought about the special teams when
yeah.
he was there with Charlie Weiss. But I think he's done a good job overall. And before him, crippling mistakes was the name of the game for special teams, and that really hasn't happened. There's occasional things here and there, but not very often. And there's occasional questions about whether or not they kick in the end zone or whatever, but they've been pretty smart about it. They cover kicks well, they do a lot of things well, right? So it's nothing against what he's done there, but I personally, I think to me, just having a special teams coach, I think you can get a guy who coaches another position and also kind of splits that there. I mean, I think it helps you on offense or defense depending on what you want to do. I've always been an advocate of getting a guy who I think you need two defensive line coaches. That's what I've always been. And I think a lot of programs have done that now where they have the interior guys and edge guys because it's very different. And they have that with they use a GA to kind of split that now. But I think it would be great to have a full-time guy. So that's what I would do is I would kind of approach it that way. If they could find some other guy to come in and also be a special teams coach while coaching another position, that would be ideal, I think.
Well, yeah, we know Larry Black's a guy that very very high. Like the former players speak very very highly of Larry Black as far as his ability to teach them pass rush and
Yeah,
that type of
did
thing.
a
And so,
tremendous job. Did a
yeah,
good job at Toledo. We saw it this year.
has done. Yeah, it really has done a really good job. So that would be interesting to see whether they could get somehow add him to the thing. But then, of course, you got the Nick Lazinski situation too, who is, I mean, the guy's he's earned the time. He's earned an opportunity, whether it's here or not, I don't know. But and everybody's high on Nick. Nick does a really good job, works hard. So, um, I think it says a lot about Notre Dame. I think it says a lot about the culture that Notre Dame has built or that Kelly built at Notre Dame. I think it says a lot about the type of people that are at Notre Dame, that it appears that most of Notre Dame's coaches would rather stay at Notre Dame, get paid less than they would at LSU. And I think that really says a lot about Notre Dame. And maybe it says something about Kelly, but I think it says a lot about Notre Dame that, hey, this is a good place to come coach. People want to be here. We have other opportunities to go elsewhere to make more money, but we'd rather stay here. I think that that's a big feather in Notre Dame's cap. I think it's something that that Marcus Freeman, right? If he's the guy, can go out and sell to guys too, sell to recruits and say, look, our guys were solicited by everywhere. They wanted it. They could have gone anywhere. When you're successful, I mean, Brian Kelly tried to hire them all and couldn't get them because they love this place so much. And I think that that's a really big selling point that some people probably just don't even think about. So if I'm Father Jenkins, if I'm Jack Swarbrick, I feel pretty good about how many people want to stick around. And Matt Balis is obviously a huge key part to all this.
Massive.
If it is Freeman, it really is. And again, I think it almost, we said at the beginning, I just can't imagine any head coach saying, oh yeah, just hire whoever, even though Matt Balis has a great reputation and things like that. So to me, it just seems like all the things are pointing towards a Marcus Freeman hire at this point.
Yeah, like Luke Fickell obviously has his guy at Cincinnati,
Sure.
who was also like, I believe he was like a Mickey Marotti like protege, who
Yeah.
was obviously the Ohio State guy, the former Notre Dame guy back in the day too, right? And I think there is something to that because he's your culture builder, right?
Yep.
He's your culture builder, and that's why all the players are so like. I mean, the players would be way more loyal to Balis than they would be to Brian Kelly because that's the guy they spend the most time with, right? And I mean, the fact that all you hear from people is good stuff about Balis and what he's done for them and how he's changed the program. So, it to retain him, it makes sense that it's coming in house because I mean, I'm sure Matt Campbell, if Matt Campbell were to, he'd want to bring his Iowa State guy. That's just how it goes. There's just very rarely like Brian Kelly wanted to bring Matt Balis to LSU for a reason, right? Like that's what happens. That's how it goes, right? Rarely do you inherit somebody and say this is the way it is, unless you're from like a really lower level,
Yeah.
right? And so I think I think that's the kind of way it's all pointing in that direction.
All right. Wanted to mention again, folks, if you're not a member of IrishSportsDaily.com, go to IrishSportsDaily.com. We'll be covering this the whole way through. I think we've done a great job so far. You can sign up. There's a subscription section there. You can sign up for a week for $1 just to see if you even like it. Just click on the subscription part of at the top of Irish Sports Daily. You can sign up and check us out and see what you think. Also, if you're on YouTube Live now and you're watching, there's a little button down there that allows you to subscribe. Click on the subscribe button, and then you can also participate in chat. So we have chat coming up here soon. We're going to answer a bunch of questions. If you have a question, make sure you type question or put like a question mark in front of your question so we know that you want us to answer your question versus this is just a bunch of, communication and chat back and forth amongst each other. So please, if you have a question, type out question and then we'll answer it. We'll know that that's the situation. Before we get to that, Jamie, I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Luke Fickell and Matt Campbell because I do think that those are two guys that would have a real opportunity. And then once we talk about that, we'll get to the questions. Sorry, I just got a text. I get distracted. So let's start with Fickell. If Fickell is a guy, what are you most excited about with him, and what would be your concerns?
Well, one, he's a guy he's not just a 1-year wonder. A lot of this, times when there's like a group of 5 coach that, kind of has the buzz and whatever, like, they had the one big year, right? The one big year, maybe even 2 big years, and then whatever, you don't see it over a sustained period. And that hasn't been the case with Fickell, right? They've won 11 games, 3 of the last 4 years. And the only reason they didn't win 11 in the other one is because they only played 10 because it was the pandemic year, right? And it was 9-1. So, I mean, you look at that, he's, obviously big time pedigree, right? Like coached at Ohio State, played at Ohio State, played big time football, recruited big time football, built Cincinnati into what it is, recruited extremely well for there. Like Cincinnati wasn't landing 4 stars before; they land some 4 stars now. They beat like Power Five teams for kids. Not just that, they find and develop and evaluate kids, and great assistant coach. Look at Notre Dame poached 2 of the assistant coaches there, right? They he's done a great job developing the program. We saw it firsthand, right? They tough, fast, physical. That's the brand of football they play, right? So, track record of success, developing a program, building toughness. That's the kind of style of football you have to play at Notre Dame in order to be successful. So there's just a lot to really, really like about him. And obviously he's had enough experience as an assistant and as a coach that like he kind of checks really all of the boxes that you would want really out of a
Ideal
guy who's
hire. I
ready to
think
go.
he's an
Yeah.
ideal hire. I think and I think it's a circumstance for him. You
Yeah.
know, he's in a situation. I think if he were and I'm sure Notre Dame's probably talked to him, and I don't know what the result was, but you know, he's not going to leave like right away. I don't think that he will. Maybe he would, but I think that that's really the only downside to the guy. I really do. I mean, is he doesn't have the pizzazz of a Marcus Freeman, when he
Yeah.
speaks, but that's not a bad thing.
No.
His history, as you mentioned, is exactly what you want, and it's being around the very best of the very best, and guys like Tressel and Urban Meyer, and being around Mickey Marotti and all the success that they've had, just being around that, and also understanding the recruiting part of that. That's a big part of it. I would I would love to have an Urban Meyer disciple just because of the recruiting part of things, because the way Meyer handles recruiting is the way it should be done. And so I think that would be an ideal hire. It's just a bad circumstance for him that he's probably not, I shouldn't say probably, could not or may not be, able to take the job. But I would be thrilled with Luke Fickell. I really would be. Um,
Oh yeah, and
yeah.
I think any Notre Dame fan should be
What?
thrilled if Fickle's the guy.
Yeah.
But if they had to wait for him till after the playoff before
Yeah.
anything, like
I wouldn't do
then
it.
it would be a no go, and that would just be, and that is the biggest downside is the circumstance and waiting for that, because so much would happen that would fall apart in between then that you couldn't do it, and you would have to do it. And the other thing is, I don't see Fickle being a Brian Kelly where he's gonna like all of a sudden right after they win to go undefeated in a season, and then he says, "Hey, I'm leaving for Notre Dame." I just don't see that him
Hmm.
being that kind of guy who would do that. So that's that. I mean, I guess the one potential downside is that they've been good on offense. And certainly Mike Denbrock has done a good job there, but they've never been really dynamic. And um, so, and I think you can have they're going to play great defense if he's the guy, right? But you have to play great offense now to win a national champion. That's just how it is, right? You have to have, and certainly some of that is players and what they can get and what they can't get in terms of like elite receivers and all that kind of stuff, and O line and what they can evaluate there. But that would be the one question, right? That would be the one question is they didn't build that off of dynamic offense. That was offense has been good, not fantastic. So that would be the one question with him.
Yeah, I think personnel is a problem there on offense. Um, I don't think their O line's that good, and I think
No.
Ritter is up and down.
Yeah.
But when he's good, he's very good, and that offense gets moving. But when he's not, it's just they don't have a lot of great skill talent. I think their back is good. They got a couple receivers that are solid, but nobody that you're like, wow, they just blow you away. So let's switch to Matt Campbell. I'll just give you my thoughts. I mean, I think he would be a really good hire. Now, would he be the best hire? I'm not sure. But I think Irish fans have kind of discounted him a little bit because of some of the losses. But dude, they forget the wins, man. This guy's got some huge, big time wins. And in order to get that, you have to have some sort of juice, some sort of game day juice, some sort of something that works. Now, obviously, it doesn't work every week because they lose some games. And to be honest, he's lost a couple games he probably shouldn't have lost. But he's also won a lot of games. People are like, well, how did he possibly win that? And to me, that's a sign of a really good coach. But he kind of reminds me of a PJ Fleck. You know what I mean? Where it's really good most of the time, and sometimes it's way better than anybody thought. But there's also some times where it's like, well, how did that happen? You know, and you know the consistency that Notre Dame got with Kelly towards the end, I think Fickle would absolutely bring that same kind of consistency. I'm not sure that Campbell would. Maybe he will with better players and you know a better system. And you know maybe that's the situation, but I think it's more certain for sure if you get Fickle. You know, I think Fickle will take it do easily as well as Kelly did here, easily, and probably better. Can he take it to the same level Marcus Freeman can if Marcus Freeman is everything that everybody hopes? I don't know. But I will say, you know, it would be wonderful for Notre Dame to hire a young African American coach that has a lot of success. And you know the thing that's the most interesting is when you talk to Irish fans, I think they want that more than anything because of the way the Tyrone situation ended and Tyrone saying Notre Dame's racist. I mean, I think that really angered a lot of Irish fans, and rightfully so, because everybody wanted Tyrone Willingham to succeed. He didn't succeed because he was lazy, and that's the bottom line. And I think that what he said and what he did afterwards, you know, really kind of set back not just Notre Dame in some ways, but also, you know, African American coaches. So, you know, here he is just blaming Notre Dame for his own failures. And so I would love to have that happen because I think it, you know, the world needs a fantastic African American coach at one of the highest profile things. That would be wonderful if that happened, and I would like to see it. But we'll see. You know, we'll see what happens. I would be thrilled with Fickle, and to be honest, I'd be happy with Matt Campbell. I think he could do a really good job. I'm just a little less sure than say Fickle at this point. Your thoughts?
Yeah. You know, obviously, I mean, you talked about all the downside with Campbell, and you know, most years, you know, they're a 7 or 8 win team, right? So there's that, and they lose games that they shouldn't. You know, they always seem to lose games that they're favored in that they shouldn't. Usually early in the year, right? And this year especially, they brought a ton back, and I think that's why people soured on them, because if they went 9-3 again this year, they were 9-3 the year before, right? If they went 9-3 again this year, or like 10-3, whatever, with all these guys, you know, they got Purdy, Brees Hall, and Kohler, and they have all this talent that come back. If they did that, people would be talking about him in the same level that they are Fickle, but they didn't do that. They didn't. It's been an underwhelming year for them.
Yeah.
And they've certainly lost games. But like you said, the big wins, like I want you to compare Oklahoma's roster to Iowa State's roster and tell me Iowa State has any business being in any game with Oklahoma, and he's beat them multiple times.
Yeah.
At Oklahoma, too. Not
Texas.
just at, yeah. He's beaten Texas.
Beating Oklahoma State.
They are, and talent wise, and he's upgraded the talent for sure. He's upgraded the talent there, and I think he is a pretty good recruiter, you know, and their staff has done a pretty good job. But you know, talent wise, they're like, you know, they're above Kansas and K State and Texas Tech probably. That's it in the entire Big 12,
Yeah.
and yet you know they're in the upper half of the Big 12. And like Iowa State, it's an extremely hard place to win, and he's made them a consistent winner. So people kind of forget that, and that kind of gets lost in all of that. They also forget that, I mean, this guy innovated, like went there, things weren't working right away. boom, they switch. I mean, people copy their defense.
Yeah.
They copy their like Notre Dame has used a lot of that as inspiration for what to do on defense, right? They not a lot of people were having success running their like 3 high safety look that they were doing. So they did that, and he's a big part of that. And I think with him, just like Fickle too, they're both Midwest guys. They get Notre Dame and the culture. They come from, he's obviously not, he's an Ohio guy, not an Ohio State guy. He's a Mount Union guy. They won a ton at Mount Union.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody knows their success there. So, I mean, he's not as sexy of a hire as Fickle or Freeman, but I mean, Notre Dame could do a lot worse than Matt Campbell.
Oh,
Let's
no
be
question.
honest. So,
Yeah, no question. All right, let's hit some questions, Jamie. First question from Kevin. How confident are you that Marcus Freeman is the guy? I truly believe we have a huge opportunity to really upgrade here, especially if we can get a good staff with pit bull recruiters. Confidence level, I don't know. I will say I do think it's trending that way. Based off everything that I've heard. Whether that ends up being the case, I don't know. There's a lot of interviews, there's a lot of stuff that needs to go on as to, whether that things are finalized or whatever. But I think it's trending that way. I agree with you. And we as the ISD staff, we have a chat that, text chat that we go through. And I think we're all in agreement. What may happen is you keep the very best of what is at Notre Dame, and then the holes that you had can be filled. If what Jamie and I discussed of Reese comes back, Taylor comes back, McNulty comes back, most of the defensive staff comes back, you keep Bayless, you keep a lot of the recruiting guys and staff. What you've done is you've lost a head coach who has a lot of experience, but you've also lost a head coach who just didn't work hard in the area that they really need to work hard, in my opinion, to get over the hump, which is recruiting. And now you have a head coach who that's everything. I mean, that's the most important thing for him to get to where he needs to be. And so this could be a huge upgrade for Notre Dame. We just don't know it yet. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think just the ceiling there is that much higher because of, one, you get to keep the continuity, like we said, and all the kind of good. And then the ceiling for the recruiting is even more, right? Like there's there's a reason why the recruiting has taken it up a level. And I promise you, if he becomes the head coach, they're going to recruit even better because he'll fight to get, we got to get more recruiting staffers. We got to get this. If guys aren't carrying the load the way they should be, and thing, he's a guy who's going to push for that. And plus too, Brian Kelly, wasn't a bad recruiter in terms of when he got in front of people. Obviously, he's a likable guy when he can get in front of people, can sell people. But Marcus Freeman is extremely more dynamic than Brian Kelly, and would be one of the more dynamic I think he's going to be one of the more dynamic recruiting head coaches out there. So,
there's no question. Yeah.
So I think, and when and it's something that you've always emphasized, Mike, too. To get to that championship level, your head coach has to care about recruiting and has to put in the work even more than the rest of the guys. And he's a guy who's already shown it. So that's why the upside is so good. And that's why people are excited about what it can be, because it's more than just what, the players caring about him and all that. It's that on top of it. And that's why it matters so much, and why people are, excited about the potential of it.
Well, I think too is, you essentially get the same kind of people, but it's just a different vibe, different juice in the building. And that, sometimes you just, after a while, you tune out a guy that's been there for 12 years, it just is what it is. And so just having a new face, new fresh thoughts, new phrases, new everything, I think can really be a huge plus. Next question. What are you guys hearing about assistant coaches, which are staying and which are leaving? Again, I think that's all up in the air. I think we kind of addressed that. I think just based off everything I've heard, the vast majority of these guys would love to stay at Notre Dame. It's just whether they'll have an opportunity to do that. So, anything you want to add, Jamie?
No, I think that, I think it all kind of depends on, this week and kind of like what they're going to do with the head coaches. Cause a lot of these guys too are it's just like recruits are being talked to and have a chance to decommit. I mean, these guys have to look at their futures as well. And if there's not clarity, if Jack Swarbrick isn't kind of sharing like what the process going on and where things are headed, and if all of a sudden they're into next week and they don't know, yeah, they want to be loyal to the players, but at the same time, they want to make sure that they're employed next year. So I think that matters.
All right, next question. Do you guys trust this administration to do what's best for Notre Dame and the players in this coaching search? Yeah, I do. I mean, I think they're doing it right now. So, I don't have any fear of that. Do you?
No, I don't think that they're I think everyone kind of paints Notre Dame, the administration, like as this broad brush of these guys, like they don't give enough or they don't do this or whatever. But I think, they've done a lot and really like kind of, Brian Kelly, he can talk about resources and whatever. Like, I mean, Notre Dame did
they gave him more than anybody else. That's for dang
they got friggin' field turf. Yeah. Like they were at Notre Dame Stadium. Like they did a lot, and they were going to continue to do a lot, and it's not stopping. Like the Goog is going to get renovated, and they're going to put more money. They're not stopping with the money. They're not stopping with the money. They'll give the resources.
Because in Kelly's press conference, he's sit there and he's talking about facilities. Dude, you're making excuses. You're making excuses for your own failure. That's just the way I looked at it. And he can blame whoever he wants and all he wants, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to win, right? And it's not, Notre Dame didn't win games. They didn't not beat Alabama because they didn't have an extra, whirlpool bath. You know what I mean? That had nothing to do with why they lost to Alabama. They didn't have the players, right? They didn't have the guys. And why didn't they have the guys? Because Brian Kelly and his staff didn't bring the guys in that they needed to. It had nothing to do with whirlpool bath or, training table or any of that type of stuff. Now, all that stuff's important. I want all that added. But to me, that was just excuse making. It really was. Hang on just a second here. Hit the wrong one here. Here we go. If Swarbrick ties up Reese and Freeman, will Fickle or anyone actually accept that arrangement? Well, I think, first of all, the Freeman thing, I think being tied up would be as head coach. I don't think Marcus Freeman's going to stay at Notre Dame to be the defensive coordinator. Well, maybe he would. I'm not. I shouldn't say that. But I don't think that that's what the conversations he's having with Freeman are about, him being the defensive coordinator. I think it's about him being the head coach. Excuse me. But I agree with you that I don't know any head coach that would accept, here's your OC, here's your DC, and here's your, strength and conditioning coach. It's just not going to happen. And again, that's why I think we strongly believe that it's trending towards Marcus Freeman. If you had to put your staff at ISD as coaches on the football team, who is in what spot? Can be a coordinator, position coach, head coach, etc. So they want me to put. I don't know, man. I don't know where we'd put you, Yama. What do you think?
You know what? I'll be quality control.
Yeah, quality control.
Yeah,
all right,
quality control.
Where would we put Christian?
Matt can be water boy.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's a pretty tall task for Matt. You think he can handle that?
I think he can handle it.
Yeah.
You got to say, player personnel. You got to get the John Bryce.
Yeah.
Throw him on there. And Chris, he can coach running backs.
Yeah. That sounds good.
He'll recruit them.
Do I have a job or?
Yeah, you're the head coach.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't think anybody wants that. That's for sure. All right. Do you think there will be backlash from the leaked video of Kelly's speech to the team? backlash and how, will, I don't think so at all. I think the new head coach would probably say, hey, look, I understand that everybody's upset, but we can't have video from our stuff leaking. I understand why somebody did that, and you had a right because you're upset, but let's not do that. And I think that would be respected. I don't think that you would see that any other time other than a situation like that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I also think that, like you know, Kyle Hamilton spoke about it after when someone released the email that Kelly sent, or message or whatever, direct message to all those guys, and he said somebody was snitching on, like, that's the kind of thing internally on the team. People, they'll find out who did
Yeah,
it, like, and
yeah,
be like, why are you doing this? Like,
yeah,
don't do this. Like, they don't need, as angry as people are, like, I mean, it gets like, it's just like the person who shared the Texas defensive line coach video. Like,
yeah.
don't share that. Like,
Yeah,
just,
that's just
I mean,
classless, classless.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think in this situation, I understand it more, because everybody's upset at Kelly. I understand it more, but anything in the future, yeah, it just should never happen. And I'm sure it'll be addressed, but I don't think anybody'd get in trouble for it. So, uh, this is an interesting one. Is Clark Lee kicking himself for taking the Vanderbilt job this year? He would have been a realistic candidate if had he stayed. I agree. I'm sure he's probably kicking himself, but I don't think he would have been hired anyway. I really don't. If he stayed, he would have got an interview, but I just, he just never recruited much, and I think that Swarbrick understands that that's what needs to happen. We're at a place, as he said, they're at a place right now where everything is golden, especially if everybody comes back. You're in a great position. The only thing you need now is somebody to take you over the top recruiting wise, and so I just don't think that Lee would have that. They wouldn't buy that he would be able to recruit and take them to that next level. I was talking on my buddy Jim sent me a text on the last live, and it's still true. If you think about it, there's a chance, and of course some things got to happen. Alabama's got to lose, right? Alabama's got to lose. Oklahoma State would have to lose, but there's a chance they could name Marcus Freeman as the head coach at Notre Dame. They make the playoff and he win the national championship. There's a realistic
yeah,
chance of that happening. I mean, wouldn't that be the best thing in the world that could have happened? I mean, Kelly bails on his team. They hire Marcus Freeman, and somehow they win the national championship. That would be the best ending that we could ever draw up. And I would laugh so hard. I really would. Anything you want
yeah.
to add?
Well, just like Michigan basketball, 1989, Christian's Michigan basketball,
Michigan
right?
man.
Big,
Yeah.
big Michigan fan, Christian. Yeah, I think it was 1989, right? The coach bailed. They end up winning the national championship, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there is precedent. It's not the same sport, but there is precedent for it.
Yep. Next question: is there a tight window to give Freeman an answer? If so, is it worth to move on him quicker than you otherwise would? I'm sure Brian Kelly's going to tell Marcus Freeman, hey, I got to have an answer soon, and I'm sure Jack Swarbrick is aware of that. Whether that changes anything, I don't know, but I don't think Swarbrick's going to care much about what timeline Kelly has, and let's be honest, Kelly looks bad right now that none of these the staff has come. So I think that Kelly will probably have to remain a little bit patient to see if he can get some more guys to show up. So I don't think it'll be a problem. You, Jamie?
No, my only thing is that I think they want to at least know this week whether or not, if he's not the guy, because if he's not the guy, then I think Freeman want to know, like, I'm out, because then he has these opportunities he can go,
Yeah.
right? So that's why it's important to have, like, the interviews this week with those guys, and, like, if he's a contender, whether he's going to get it or not, they have that idea of where they're going with it.
Yeah. All right. Hang on just a second. I got a question here. Let me find it. I think this is a very good question, and I have a good answer for you. Why are we not following the cardinal rule of not having folks learn on the job how to be a head coach at Notre Dame? It's too big of a job. Okay. And I get that. I understand that. But number 1 ranked team, Georgia, first time head coach. Number 3 ranked team, Cincinnati, first time head ranked coach. Number 5 ranked team, Oklahoma State, first time head coach. Number 7, Ohio State, first time head coach. Number 9, Baylor, first time head coach. Number 12, BYU, first time head coach. Number 13, Oklahoma, first time head coach. Number 14, Utah, first time head coach. I don't think those guys are regretting those decisions right now. You know, those guys have shown you can do this without being a head coach. And that's what 8 out of the top 14 teams right now have head coaches that had no prior experience at all. 8 out of the top 14 teams. That's why. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's kind of said it all.
Yeah. This question, did Freeman really rip Kelly? There's this rumor about this. I'm not sure I'm buying that. Jamie, what do you think?
I'm not. I don't really buy that either.
Yeah.
I just don't think that. Why would he even waste the time?
Yeah, and I mean, if he did, I think he'd probably do it. I don't know. I think
Definitely
it'd probably
not
be
do
in
it in
private
front of all
more.
these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't do it like this big
Yeah.
show. What would be the point of that?
Yeah, exactly. Question, it's now out nationally, NFL radio, Sirius, Mad Dog are all saying Freeman cussed out Kelly after getting text he's leaving for LSU. I'm sure that, and that's, again, I don't think that that's probably unlikely that, Freeman was mad at Kelly and did it privately, but this idea that he did it in front of the team, I have not heard that. And I know that's out there, but I've not heard that at all, that it happened at the team meeting. And he was only there for 2 minutes. So I don't know when the cussing out would have gone, because, and they have the audio, right? The audio is there. So I don't know. I guess I just don't buy it. All right. Hang on. I'm looking for more questions. Folks, if you have more questions, let us know. We're going to have to wrap up here soon because Jamie's got to be done by 11 to take Kai home. So we got to see if we have any more questions here. Once again, if you have questions, just type it in there and we'll answer them. All right, there's a whole lot of debate here, but not a whole lot of questions. Here's one.
Yeah, I noticed there was a lot of debate.
Yeah. Question regarding players leaving if Freeman is not named head coach. Do you think if Fickle was the guy, then Freeman would vouch for him to current players and recruits? Well, I think so, but it just depends. I don't think Marcus Freeman was the type to go try and steal your players if he's only been there a year, and he went somewhere else. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be an issue anyway. I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Here's another one. I think it would be great to have a minority head coach. I think it's time and would offer some huge advantages. What are your thoughts on this? I guess we did kind of already discuss that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Jamie. As a minority yourself, is that something that would impact you?
It would. It definitely would. You want to see that people are getting a fair chance. It's funny because I looked at it as I was looking at Brian Kelly in front of LSU's roster, and where kind of all those guys, a lot of obviously mostly an African-American room that he was speaking to, and here comes this 6-year-old white guy who comes in the room, and there's one thing that's about relating to players and all that kind of stuff too, but it's also kind of knowing that it's why even though Deion Sanders, I don't think he should be he's done enough to be the head coach for anything. That's why people call for it, because they want to see, people are inspired when they see other minorities because they know that a lot of them don't get those chances, right? So, yeah, I think it would be. I mean, it'd certainly be. My dad was a longtime high school football coach, and like definitely like there was not like there's a lot of white guys in him,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for a lot of years, right? So
Yeah. I think it matters more than people realize. I really do. Just in talking to many, minority players at Notre Dame over the years, it really does matter. And it just I think it would be a wonderful thing if it could happen. We'll see what happens. Next question: if it is Freeman, when should we expect a decision? I would assume there has to be some urgency, being exactly 2 weeks away from signing day. I would guess, as we said, I think it'll probably happen by the end of this week for sure. If it was, wouldn't you?
yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
The weekend, like the other thing is too is that if they knew that it's that, they'll try to get it out before the rankings thing too, to kind of sway it, which is obviously a joke too, which you didn't even get into the whole like idea that you would penalize Notre Dame because Brian Kelly left.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's see. Let's see if we have a couple more here, and then we'll shut it down. We'll try and have another one later today, folks. I just got to convince Matt Freeman to come on, and that has been a chore, hasn't it?
He's a busy guy right now.
He's a busy guy, but
Yeah.
everybody wants to
Yeah.
hear from the Freeman, don't they? I mean, I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What do we know about the Freeman-Reese relationship? If Reese doesn't get the head coaching job, do you think he would work effectively with Freeman? Look, Tommy Reese is probably the most easygoing, laid back, relaxed guy you're going to find. And I don't think he's a guy that gets overly high or low about things. And I think that they would work fine together. If I'm Tommy Reese, I'm looking at this as an opportunity because he wants to be a head coach someday. And for Reese, he already knows the players. He knows what he has, and he knows whether he can win with those guys. And I think Reese looks at the opportunity. I know for a fact they really like Buckner and his potential. They are very high on Notre Dame's future at offensive line, and it'd be hard not to be. Boy, when you look at the talent there, they've got some great skill players. As long as they can keep Tobias Merriweather, Amorian Walker, and C.J. Williams, that will go a long way. And, I'm sure that they'll get a lot of good things at LSU and other places, but it's a known versus an unknown. And let's be honest, like Jamie said, Reese came here because he wanted to coach at Notre Dame, and I don't think there's any doubt Tommy Reese wants to be the head coach at Notre Dame sometime soon too. So, keep doing a good job at Notre Dame, and that will probably happen someday. I would guess. Thoughts, Jamie?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, is he going to get the autonomy to run the offense completely on his own? And that's the one thing with Brian Kelly. Even though he's not calling the plays, he is kind of looking over his shoulder.
Yeah.
So if he's going to get that, he's going to want that freedom. If he gets that freedom, that'll make a big difference.
Yeah. All right, folks, I think we're going to have to call it because Jamie's got a roll here. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for all the questions.
Thanks, everybody.
We will be back on later. I just got to try and get Matt, or if I can't get Matt, I'll drag Christian back on here, and we'll do it later this afternoon or early evening. So be looking for it. Hopefully we'll have more updates. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.